So unless you've been living under a rock, you already know who Trump is, but in case you have been, here's a quick refresher. At age 25, he took over his father's real estate business and made the switch from middle-class housing to luxury developments. At 34, he built the iconic Trump Tower in Manhattan. By 40, he owned casinos, luxury apartments, and one of the most famous properties in the world, the Plaza Hotel. By 50, he went from almost bankruptcy to turning his name into a billion-dollar brand, and just a couple of years ago, he became the 45th president of the United States. Whether you love him or hate him, the man plays by his own rules. And although a lot of what he's doing right now seems to be like a chaotic mess, it's actually all very calculated. It's not random. There's a strategy behind it. And it all starts with this book. This book isn't just about real estate, but it's a blueprint to how Trump thinks. And after reading it, a lot of what he's doing right now that seems crazy from the outside now makes sense. So in this video, I want to go over 8 strategies that Trump uses, some examples of how he's using them right now, and why this book is the key to understanding what he will do going into the future. Strategy 1. Aim high. My style of deal making is quite simple and straightforward. I aim very high, and then I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get what I'm after. Sometimes I settle for less than I sought, but in most cases, I still end up with what I want. This is a very simple one, but Trump takes this simple strategy and pushes it to the extreme. Let me give you an example. When buying his first airplane, Trump targeted a company called the Diamond Shamrock, who was going through financial troubles at the time and looking to sell some of their assets. According to Trump, a Boeing 727 sells for around $30 million, and knowing that they were struggling, he offered a ridiculously low $5 million. The company countered with 10, and he haggled it all the way down to $8 million. As you can see, he put himself in a very strong position, he aimed extremely high, and then he fought until he got a good deal. And he's actually doing something very similar right now. Trump has talked about making Canada the 51st state. He's talked about getting Greenland from Denmark, taking back the Panama Canal from Panama, and rebuilding the Gaza Strip into a riviera that the United States will own. Now, it's very likely that none of this will happen, but what's important here is not what he's saying, but what he's thinking, how he's thinking. You see, this is his idea of aiming high. Every one of these statements is his idea of offering $5 million for a $30 million plane. It's how the saying goes, he who does not ask does not receive. And who knows, he might even get away with something. Perhaps US investments in Greenland or Gaza, or reducing Chinese influence in Panama. The point is that although these statements are kind of crazy and ambitious, they're simply a front for a more competitive negotiation. Strategy 2. Use your leverage. The worst thing you can possibly do in a deal is seem desperate to make it. That makes the other guys smell blood, and then you're dead. The best thing you can do is deal from strength, and leverage is the biggest strength you can have. This one is very easy to spot in the plain example from earlier. The Diamond Shamrock needed cash fast, and Donald Trump had cash, and so he had leverage. And that meant that he also got a good deal. But you can also see this happening right now. Recently, Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on both Mexico and Canada. This at first was a very big shock, but once again, the negotiations started, and once again, the United States now has leverage. And in order to avoid tariffs, these 3 countries have worked out a new deal. Canada and Mexico agree to help preventing drugs from being smuggled into the United States, and Trump will delay the threat of tariffs for the time being. As you can see, leverage is clearly being used here, and the USA got a great deal. Less drugs get smuggled into the country, and Mexico and Canada don't get hit by tariffs. In Trump's own words, you have to convince the other guy that it's in his best interest to make the deal. But why only delay the threat of tariffs? Why not cancel them completely? Well, that's actually part of the next strategy. Strategy 3. Maximize your options. In the case that Mexico and Canada don't keep up their end of the deal and drugs continue to be smuggled into the US, then now Trump has another option. He can put tariffs back on the table. So I actually filmed that a couple weeks ago, but that's actually exactly what ended up happening. The drug problems didn't stop, and so just the other day, Trump made this announcement.
We understand vast amounts of fentanyl have poured into our country from Mexico, and as you know, also from China, where it goes to Mexico and goes to Canada.
And just like that, tariffs are back. Part of the deal. He does this in every deal that he makes. When Trump had the option to purchase the Penn Central Rail Yards at West 34th Street, his first proposal was to build middle-income housing using government financing. But at that point, the city started having financial problems, and money for public housing quickly dried up. Most people at this point would take the loss and sell. But not Trump. He just switched to his backup plan and landed a deal for the city to build a convention center on his land. The point is that Trump gives himself as many options as possible. That way, if one path doesn't work, if an investor gets flaky, or if a deal falls through, he always has another option. I always protect myself by being flexible. I never get too attached to one deal or one approach. For starters, I keep a lot of balls in the air because most deals fall out, no matter how promising they seem at first. It's very obvious that Trump is still doing this, keeping as many options open as possible, even scheduling meetings with Putin, who's a NATO enemy. This is causing sort of a divide between NATO and Trump, and this is something that a lot of people are very confused about. They're confused as to why he would do this. But you have to see it from Trump's point of view. Although this may seem rash, it simply gives you more options. To Trump, being too close to NATO takes away the options of making deals with Russia. And if you want to be in the best position to make a deal, then you have to maximize your options. Strategy 4. Contain the costs. To this day, if I feel a contractor is overcharging me, I'll pick up the phone, even if it's only for $5,000 or $10,000, and I'll complain. People say to me, "What are you bothering for over a few bucks?" My answer is that the day I can't pick up the telephone and make a 25-cent call to save $10,000 is the day I'm going to close up shop. I think most of you can probably tell where I'm going with this one because it literally has everything to do with the new Department of Government Efficiency. Run by Elon Musk, this department is all about containing costs to a minimum. And when your country is trillions of dollars in debt and the total spend exceeds the interest of that debt, there's a big problem. As Trump says, you can dream great dreams, but they'll never amount to much if you can't turn them into reality at a reasonable cost. Donald Trump back in the day was known for keeping his construction projects always done on budget and on time, and he did this by maintaining costs, by always getting the most out of every dollar. And the way he looks at his country now is as a failing business. A business that spends more than it makes and that spends not millions, but billions on things that it doesn't need. Like a business, countries are not exempt from going bankrupt. And if this happens, then it would be truly catastrophic, not only for the country, but for the world. And so that's why Trump knows how important it is to keep costs low. Strategy 5. Quick communication. With so many regulators and regulations to satisfy, we had one major advantage: the fact that we are not a bureaucracy. In most large public corporations, getting an answer to a question requires going through 7 layers of executives, most of whom are superfluous in the first place. In our organization, anyone with a question can bring it directly to me and get an answer immediately. That's precisely why I've been able to act so much faster than my competitors on so many deals. This once again is very similar to Doge because Doge is all about staying lean. When you have a successful company, it has to stay lean in order to stay competitive in any market. When a company grows fat, when it starts to create positions that aren't needed, when there are too many middlemen, then a smaller company that is more efficient and more leaner will come to dominate. That's sort of the law of the jungle when it comes to capitalism. This means that when you're running a successful organization, you have to keep it lean. You have to get rid of the middlemen who slow down communication, and you see this with Elon. As soon as Trump took office in 2025, he started issuing executive orders. An executive order is a signed written directive to make sure that the laws be faithfully executed. Usually these will have a report or an investigation to go with them, which can take months. But Trump in large part has cut this out. Instead, he uses his new department, Doge, to make sure that his orders are being executed right away. Although this makes the government way more efficient, it's also brought up some concerns about how much power exactly the executive branch has. It's important to remember that an executive order cannot override federal laws and statutes. If that happens, then we have a different problem. Strategy 6. Get the word out. If you are a little different or a little outrageous, or if you do things that are bold or controversial, the press is going to write about you. I've always done things a little differently. I don't mind controversy, and my deals tend to be somewhat ambitious. Not only are Trump's deals ambitious, but sometimes they're a little bit exaggerated. When he signed a deal to stop a trade war with China, he used phrases like a momentous step, never taken before, and historic trade deal. And he does this to show off his accomplishments, to make them feel big, not just for the rest of the world, but also for his own people. This all circles around a concept called truthful hyperbole. In Trump's own words, truthful hyperbole is an innocent form of exaggeration and a very effective form of promotion. There's nothing quite innocent about this though. It's all very calculated, and in a world that longs for something to cheer for, Trump is able to give them that thing. He's been doing this for his entire life, from in real estate to as president, so this is definitely something to watch out for going into the future. Strategy 7. Fight back. My philosophy has always been that if you ever catch someone stealing, you have to go after him very hard, even if it costs you 10 times more than he stole. Stealing is the worst. Trump fights back, and everyone knows that. Not just against businesses, but against anyone. He's already said things like all hell is going to break out if Hamas didn't release the Israel hostages. And a theme that you see a lot with Trump is that he very much values strength. In every situation, no matter what, even if he is losing, he still chooses strength. I hate lawsuits and depositions, but the fact is that if you're right, you've got to take a stand, or people will walk all over you. Whether it's China or Russia or NATO, Trump will not let anyone walk over him. If he feels like he is getting the bad end of a deal, then he will be the first one to let the world know. Strategy 8. Think big. I like thinking big. I always have. To me, it's simple. If you're going to be thinking anyway, you might as well think big. Most people think small because most people are afraid of success, afraid of making decisions, afraid of winning. And that gives people like me an advantage. This one right here is the real winner's mindset. Trump is someone who always thinks big. He believes that he is the best, that he is the greatest, and most importantly, that he is a winner. And he gets other people to believe it about themselves as well. People may not always think big themselves, but they can still get very excited by those who do. People want to believe that something is the biggest and the greatest and the most spectacular. Trump genuinely believes that the United States is number one, and he will fight to make America stay on top. And although it's difficult to understand why he says the things he says or does the things he does, it all really comes down to that, staying on top. That's what all these strategies come down to. They are all part of his plan to stay competitive in an increasingly changing world. And so even if you don't agree with Trump or don't like him, I hope that this video at least helped you see the world from his perspective, that ambitious winner, but sometimes ruthless mindset. And that's what this channel is all about, a devotion to see the world through the eyes of people that will go down in history. And whether we agree with them or not, there's always something to learn there. Anyways, thank you all for watching. I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one.